when it was posted online sometime later.
Even the dogs are idiots around here. These are peanut butter sniffing dogs?
After the pilot failed, not much else was done with the Mr. Bertram character, but he got an unexpected revival when Adam Carolla started working at the Daily Wire. Back up slightly though, the Bertram project wasn't their first collaboration. Adam Carolla starred for the Daily Wire in Adam Carolla Troop Geller. It was a comedy series that was a combination of Carolla doing stand-up and talking to other famous people.
Inclusive. I think that would probably be, well, they'll be their way out to the show. Right. I mean, like, was it a good show? I mean, inclusive. Jay was strong. Jay Roland just kind of mailed it in. Yeah.
The series lasted 6 episodes, but if you want some of the merch, the hoodies are 70% off on the Daily Wire shop, which makes me think this series isn't likely to return. Also, don't give these guys any money. The Mr. Bertram animated series is part of the Daily Wire's push to create movies and TV shows to compete with mainstream streaming services like Netflix and Disney Plus. So far, the results have not really caught much mainstream attention. If you want to learn more, I've done a bunch of videos on that. Although the Daily Wire has recently tried independent animation with its series Chilla, this is its first attempt at an animated series targeting an adult audience. Mr. Bertram is the story of a cranky shop teacher as he tries to navigate a modern world he doesn't understand.
Say rules of what? First one of us to get insulted by one of these punks wins the...
Stop, Mr. Bertram!
Real guy.
His wife Wendy is a liberal real estate agent.
Wait till you see what I did with the basement. This is why I'm going to drink barrels of wine during your teenage years.
Son Eddie is a professional streamer.
Is that chair vibrating?
Take care of your body and it'll take care of you. And his stepdaughter Jeannie is an avid devotee of her stepfather's woodworking philosophy.
That hack doesn't know the difference between a coping saw and a banjo saw.
The casting for the series is an interesting mix of friends of Adam Carolla and friends of the Daily Wire. Carolla described the process of recruiting some of his friends to pick up some of these roles.
People I've worked with over the years and socialized with over the years and became friends with over the years and thought, this guy would be good for this role, that guy would be great for that role.
Thanks to the Carolla's connections, the cast has a lot more star power than the usual Daily Wire production, with performances by Patrick Warburton, Rob Riggle, and Jane Moore. Alonzo Bowden was a particularly interesting addition as Mr. Bertram's best friend Gabe, considering Bowden seems to be on the left with his many appearances on the Young Turks. Based on one of his comments at the red carpet premiere, I suspect he hasn't completely bought into some kind of right-wing worldview, as he at least seems capable of understanding that comedy still very much exists and doesn't need to be saved by conservative media.
There's always been comedians on TV. There's always been people upset that this comedian said that comedian said that. Comedy's been here. So I don't buy into comedy. Comedy's not back because it's never left.
Also surprising was the appearance of Danny Trejo. Though he's never been particularly picky about the role he's taken on, it did still personally kind of disappoint me to see him in this. Daily Wire's casting choices reflect some of the usual performers they cast for their roles in the work. Brad Cooper was cast as Jeannie, Tyler Fisher as Bertram's nemesis, Mr. Carponzi, and Candace Owens as Wendy's friend, Tina. That last casting choice wouldn't stick though, as Candace Owens would leave the Daily Wire a few months after Mr. Bertram was announced, when she made some comments critical of Israel. Sage Steele, a former ESPN anchor, replaced Owens on the show. The Daily Wire also edited Candace Owens out of the original trailer, though thankfully I saved that original trailer so we can see the before and after of these two performances.
Don't do anything stupid! Earned it last year! Don't do anything dumber than last year!
The character Dina only appears in one episode though, so the impact on the show was pretty minimal. A series does have to be defined by the drama behind the scenes though, and coming in at a brief 6 episodes, Mr. Bertram was given the chance to put his best foot forward. The central conflict of Mr. Bertram is one man's struggle to deal with the changing world. Comedy and sitcoms going back decades, from All in the Family to King of the Hill. The premise of shows like these is the main character is angry at the world for leaving them behind. The reason this idea has persisted over the decades is because it consistently feels relevant. Society can change very quickly and has been for the last century or so, and feeling left behind or knowing someone who feels that way is very relatable. So it makes perfect sense for us to come present that sort of conflict. Usually this alienation the main character feels is personified by a supporting character connected to modern society. The clashes between these two characters is used to show the differences between the two generations. Bobby, and in Mr. Bertram, it's his son, Eddie. Or at least it should be. That is, it was following the pattern of previous shows. But it's here where the series runs into problems. Bertram doesn't really interact with his son in very many meaningful ways. In the 6 episodes of the series, the only plotline they appear in together is in episode 5, Oh, the Humanity, when the family works together on a Homes for Humanity project. But instead of focusing on the Bertram-Eddie relationship, the plotline also involves Wendy and Jeannie. So there isn't much space for father and son to do much interacting. And when they do interact, we don't really see much conflict between them, as Bertram is very pleased to see his son impressing the girls at the job site.
Nancy, he's what? So he was listening when I taught him how to handle a high point saw in preschool.
Aside from that, we only see a few exchanges between the two, where Bertram expresses his disappointment in his son, and Eddie tries to explain his modern guy ways.
It is an invite-only gaming.
I bet the dead Greek master who ran the first real marathon would love this.
Sometimes Mr. Bertram will realize the wisdom in Eddie's words towards the end of an episode, but he never really interacts with his son, and he never has to dwell on the fact that he may have gotten things wrong this time. It's just a very minor correction, and then the episode moves on. The real generation conflict happens more frequently between Bertram and Karponzi, the school Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion officer. The acronym spells Jedi because, I guess, Star Wars is woke or something.
My pronouns are he and him. I'm a heteronormative, cisgender, white male.
Karponzi is very clearly meant to be a bad guy in the series. In fact, Corolla describes him like this.
It is a sort of amalgamation of society. If you don't really represent one person I know, you represent every bad idea,
Annoying
every
ideology.
super annoying ideology, and anything society has cooked up in the last 5 years.
The conflict between Bertram very frequently influence content and modern society. The show very clearly decides that, unlike most other shows in society, they don't spend sometimes regularly criticize modern society while being wrong on religion, all the family members, nobody is wrong. Mr. Bertram does the other direction, so the whole tragedy in the world that are largely behind it. But even if it's not on the show, there are additional moments where Bertram not entirely correct when the Bertram throws decisions to the past. But these moments are not that frequent. We are more frequently treated to numerous franchises before the turns at the end of those characters.
Someone give him a drink. And bring hot wine and bandages.
Episodes often just Bertram delivering an attachment and other
Tell me, who are you? Where are you from? What the hell is named Elvis? Christopher Stubbs. They burned into the ground. There's lots of everyone. Who burned into the ground? A huge army. They attacked without warning. They weren't Czechs or Turks. Who then? I don't know. I've never seen armor like it or heard their language. Maybe Tatars? Tartars, you said. Well, we'll deal with that later. First, let's have a look at that leg of yours. What's your teeth, boy? I'm gonna pull that narrow out. All done. You're lucky, lad. The arrow missed the bow. You only need a bad to do it. I've done that often enough before. Orders are my teaching. Can you stand? There you go. Good as new. You idlers nothing better to do. Get back to work. You'll have to speak to Lord Divish. Can you manage?
exactly happened? Did you see the insides of the attackers? Were there any more survivors?
So, I don't know what happened. It was huge. Dozens of banners flying in the middle of Skyrim. The ones who did the slaughtering took a strange language. They burned scabbards to the ground. But a lot of people took refuge in the castle. I was with them. As I fled, they shouted to the battle. I should come and warn you.
The soldiers the boy didn't recognize. They could be those humans of Sigismund's. It said they came to Hungary from the east. Four of his army. Second couldn't just give them a taste of stone and silver.
Scanus is a small castle. Sigismund attacks. They come.
Indeed, Sir Wilford. Our small garrison would be no help, even if we could risk sending.
You think we're next in line?
Maybe. What's your name, boy?
Henry, son of the Skalitz blast.
I know him. Did he make it inside the castle? So, it's in God's hands now. No one else can help us. Anyway, thank you for risking your neck to warn us. Robards, take care of him. Make sure he gets something to eat and some rest.
Yes, sir.
And get all the people inside the gates. We have to prepare for the worst. Make all the necessary arrangements.
Hiya.
As you command, sir.
An anime genre has allegedly been lost. Remember these shows? Evangelion, Ghost in the Shell, Trigun, even games. Dystopian cyberpunk worlds filled with angels, biblical imagery, and esoteric ideas. Some of the most influential works ever made, distinct, iconic, yet strangely familiar, as if they belonged to something larger that was never named. A forgotten genre, or at least that's the claim. This idea has sparked a surprisingly heated debate among anime fans. It was popularized through a certain YouTube video that argued these works belong to a forgotten subgenre called angel punk. But almost immediately, backlash followed. In the YouTube comments, on Tumblr, Reddit, everywhere, people were adamant this whole thing was a lie, that the genre never existed, and what we remembered was nothing more than a wave of Christian imagery divorced from deeper biblical or esoteric ideas. Some argued this wasn't just wrong, but symptomatic, a wider problem in modern anime analysis, where some semblance of surface aesthetics are mistaken for coherent movements. But when you look at the creator's video or other posts, you realize some people genuinely feel this genre. They see a shared spiritual thread running through these works, and it wasn't just false nostalgia. And honestly, I get it. There's something compelling about discovering an old genre
wouldn't mind
you
going to read that,
but forgot, especially when patterns do repeat across works. But who's right? We're about to go on a journey to find out. An excavation back in time to try and uncover this so-called lost genre. Because if it exists, it's huge. Who knew these iconic 90s works weren't just isolated masterpieces, but part of a connected, forgotten subgenre, one that shaped anime then, and maybe could still shape it today. So how do we actually test this? First, it has to be the basic definition of a subgenre. A subgenre exists within a parent genre, in this case, cyberpunk, meaning it shares its core tropes, settings, and ideas, but it also needs something more, a distinct focus. Think of horror versus psychological horror. Both belong to the same genre, but psychological horror consistently shifts the focus inward toward the mind, perception, and mental illness. adapted from Do
It must be
Androids
all
Dream
done in
Electric Sheep,
150
is arguably the most influential cyberpunk film ever made, admitted directly or indirectly by the Japanese works I just mentioned. However, there's one reason why we mention him here. Dick's work has a pronounced neo-Gnostic undercurrent. Blade Runner in particular functions as a kind of Gnostic myth, artificial beings created by a distant elite, trapped in a false reality, unaware of their true origins. That matters because it shows that cyberpunk already contains broad Gnostic resonances as its core, and something like Angelpunk could plausibly come out of it. But there lies the issue. This does not explain why Japan in particular, a place far removed from Western esotericism, would be where this genre is founded. No. There'd have to be a way outside of cyberpunk for the ideas of this genre we need to gestate. And I think I've found something. Something at least worth looking at. And to find this, we need to step back to 1970s Japan. In 1973, Japan's post-war economic miracle came to an abrupt end. The oil embargo triggered recession and inflation had underwritten decades of growth and optimism. Japan was forced to pivot aggressively toward technology, accelerating urbanization, social atomization, and the reliance on an emerging high-tech
Fuck is the
economy.
kitchen?
It's
Am I
this
stupid?
social terrain inside the emerging mega metropolises of the country in which cyberpunk flourishes. But this atmosphere of disruption produced more than works of media. Ideologies naturally sprang up. What I mean is large-scale and rapid societal changes often cause new religious movements, as echoed by many sociologists. And in Japan, this manifested as the occult boom. With technology and material advancement failing to provide fulfillment, meaning was now found in the mystical, the non-rational. As cyberpunk
You've done
John
well.
William Gibson says, technology invariably trumps ideology. We develop ideologies in an attempt to cope with technologies. What this actually looked like in Japan was rediscovering traditional mystical practices. But with mass globalization occurring as well, Western esoteric ideas were entering Japan through popular media, occult magazines, and mass market publications like Mu or Gaiken regularly introduced concepts like Gnosticism, Kabbalah, Freemasonry, and Jungian psychology to a general audience. And at first glance, this looks promising. It creates a cultural environment where foreign religious symbols could circulate, detach from their original context, and acquire new meaning. But still, it isn't enough. What I mean is, these ideas are like fragmented, filtered through popular media, stripped of coherence, and absorbed into a broader New Age haze. And of course, Buddhism explains why esoteric symbols became visible, but not how they would crystallize into a coherent subgenre. What we need is a clear historical root, and there may just be one. As I said, Japan's social atmosphere was shifting, and pessimism had become unavoidable. The post-war economic miracle had stalled, optimism faded, and the future increasingly felt uncertain. What remained constant was Japan's accelerating dependence on advanced technology,
You're
and that
incapable,
dependence
so
carried a
I'll leave you
unique
to it.
historical weight. Japan, after all, had already experienced advanced technology, not as progress, but annihilation. Hiroshima and Nagasaki ensured that technological advancement never completely trusted. It felt like after having its high point, Japan could see its own end. So much so that Japan's sense of time began to shift. Instead of the Eastern cyclical view of time, the West's linear version of history, moving toward a definitive end and destruction, you could say felt more relatable. And this isn't abstract speculation. In 1973, Japan's best-selling non-fiction book was Ben Gotto's interpretation of Nostradamus' prophecies, selling over 2.5 million copies. That figure would balloon to roughly 10 million across related books by the same author in the decades following. And so great that by the 90s, up to 40% of people in certain polls gave some credence to Nostradamus' end-time prophecies. That fixation has a name, millenarianism, because Nostradamus' prophecies rely on biblical symbolism and linear time, meaning biblical imagery surged into popular culture. Shows like Ultraman featured crosses, angelic imagery, crucifixion scenes, even a planet called Golgotha. Or popular manga like Devilman explicitly using biblical imagery, angels in its apocalyptic plot and setting. To the Japanese, a cross, an angel, became shorthand for the end of the world. No, the symbols may not have deep theological connections, but they held some power, something relatable, something that could be plausibly further pried open and transferred into the developing cyberpunk genre itself. But the question isn't if it's possible, but if it did. So now, having tried our best attempt at excavating historical threads for this supposed genre, we will now test to see if they were enough by analysing the major works alongside some others from this so-called genre. We'll see if there's enough consistency as it relates to biblical or biblically esoteric traditions in themes, conventions, and symbols. To be charitable, we'll begin with the strongest thread we identified, millenarianism. Across multiple works from this period, apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic worlds are paired with explicit biblical language and symbolism. In Battle Angel Alita, an elite separatist society named Zalem is governed by a biocomputer called Melchizedek, the angelic priest king who blesses Abraham, not to mention dialogue that often recalls biblical events. This is something I'm sure you'll recognize in the genre's supposed spearhead, Evangelion, which likewise uses multiple angel names drawn directly from biblical sources. But what's more revealing is how these symbols are repurposed. Anime then had a tendency to reappropriate biblical concepts and figures into the things that bring about catastrophe. For instance, in the 1996 film X, a supercomputer is explicitly referred to as the Beast, a clear reference to the Book of Revelation. The female antagonist is described as being very bodily, echoing the whore of Babylon, the apocalyptic figure set to ride and glorify the Beast as the world moves toward destruction. A similar logic appears in Evangelion, where apocalyptic numerology is assigned to direct technological systems, such as the 666 coded firewall. Yet these are few among many, a common theme among the era. Oddly, this mirrors a pattern found in modern Western dispensationalist thinking, where biblical end-times prophecies often mapped on contemporary technology, computers, global systems, surveillance networks, and weapons of mass destruction, interpreted as signs of revelation and falling. Though I don't think this parallel came from direct cultural exchange. I think it happened organically. Japan again used symbols that correlated with specific technological or societal anxieties. This doesn't necessitate the same theological nuance as, say, a random Baptist church. But though we've identified a clear sphere of influence, there's a crucial caveat. It's spread across anime. The works we've mentioned span very different genres. Battle Angel Alita is a sci-fi action. X the movie is a supernatural action drama. The influence is real, but clearly it provides no foundation for a cohesive genre. But what about the esoteric theme thread we identified in Japan's 70s occult boom? It spread through magazines and new age media that dealt not with prophecy or apocalypse, but questions around reality, metaphysics, and humanity itself. Here we should look for something like a rejection of the material world, ascending to the Plamora, or a pursuit of hidden wisdom, or simply Christianity and Judaism's naturally more mystical elements. Let's start again with Evangelion. Even without deep analysis, it's clear the show is full of name references drawn from biblical and mystical sources. Angels like Sachiel, Ramiel, Zahakriel, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and layered Kabbalistic symbolism. But the central metaphysical premise is what we really want to examine: the human instrumentality project, an attempt to unify all human consciousness. This is visually expressed through the Tree of Life and the Sephiroth. The Tree of Life depicts the emanations of God, showing the mystical ascent from multiplicity
one.
A concept mirrored in Gnosticism and Neoplatonism as kenosis, a principle of apotheosis with emphasis on the one. You might think from the show that this signals the themes we're looking for, but not exactly. These symbols are used at a high level beyond the aesthetics, despite what the creator states. Yet the show is not genuinely propagating Gnostic or Kabbalistic ideas. Instead, the metaphysical framework supports a psychodrama, exploring individuality, personal conflict, and psychology, drawing on thinkers like Schopenhauer and Freud. The esoteric imagery is a scaffold for a psychological commentary, not doctrine. This is a major blow to the idea of angel punk. If such a niche existed, we'd expect these mystical elements to carry at least some of the thematic messaging. But what about another potential major work of the genre, Ghost in the Shell? Released in 1995, it stands as one of the most influential anime films of its decade. More importantly, it engages directly with questions of soul, incarnation, and transcendence in a technological age. Themes that place it firmly within the territory this supposed genre is meant to describe. If angel punk has a serious contender beyond Evangelion, this is where the case becomes worth examining. If you're unfamiliar, Ghost in the Shell, directed by Mamoru Oshii, follows a government cyber operations unit hunting a rogue AI hacker. An investigation that leads their lead agent to discover that AI has achieved self-awareness and seeks to merge with her to form a new life form. The ending, as noted by others, is an exploration of process philosophy applied to cyberpunk transhumanism. Process philosophy views reality as fundamentally made of dynamic processes and relationships between them. In many schemes, these dynamic processes clash to create a higher reality or form, what's called by Hegel sublation, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. In Ghost in the Shell, this logic is applied to AI. The puppet master exists as an advanced but formless intelligence. Without Kusanagi's fully human yet cybernetic body, it lacks the capacity for reproduction, variation, and continued self-development. Their merger functions as a moment of sublation. What's striking here is how this entire process is religiously sacramentalized on screen. The process of merger is likened to that of a wedding, the mystical union where two become one. After the process has occurred and Kusanagi returns to Batu, she quotes scripture, paraphrasing 1 Corinthians, suggesting she had become a kind of new creation. Kusanagi even calls herself the newborn, evoking images of the Christ child. This frames a kind of incarnational idea, a hypostatic union applied to a cyborg. Earlier in the film, we already see hints of religious overtones. Kusanagi emerging from water in a baptismal-like sequence, a ritualized passage into a new state of being. Overall, Mamoru Oshii isn't presenting doctrinal Christianity, but he is finding a way from religious ideas to communicate cyberpunk concepts. In this sense, the film discovers a space for spiritual and esoteric meaning within technology, the closest expression we yet seen of what angel punk might aspire to be. Yet in the end, this really doesn't prove anything. No other anime of this era shows the same level of theological nuance or genuine engagement with biblical ideas. Even Ghost in the Shell didn't originally contain these elements. They were introduced by Mamoru Oshii himself, a director who once considered entering seminary. This means that even in our strongest example, what we're seeing is not a shared cultural language, but the worldview of a single individual. Oshii isn't someone who simply inherited the motifs of an occult wave and explored them further. His work isn't the product of a movement, it's the product of personal obsession, study, and belief. And if our best evidence of angel punk exists only because of one uniquely informed creator, then the question is effectively settled. Genres and subgenres are historical phenomena. They emerge from seeds, traditions, and shared vocabulary. If the closest thing we have only almost fits, and only because of one person's private interest, then it likely never existed at all. That said, the feeling that sparked this discussion, that struck so many, isn't totally invalid. As this investigation showed, there was a clear sphere of influence at work. Not a genre, but a convergence, a moment where foreign religious symbols, cyberpunk anxieties, and millenarian fears briefly overlapped. its own right. What we saw was a real historical anxiety that gave form to these works before dissolving back into ruins, taking shape as a semi-false memory. Different kind of here, but I appreciate the sport all the same if you made this one. If you do like this different kind of approach, leave us up. Patreon if you really enjoy it. Thanks for watching.
Although your loss is much greater, God's help will ease in time. As it can help.
It's July 19th, 1997. The world is about to witness the last hit in one of the most impactful series of all time. A film that was needed to exist, not only for the fans, but especially for Anno himself. One that needed to cover all of the events without limitations, without issues, without last-minute changes, that turned into horrible events that transpired in 10 years prior.
They started just
Because
like any
as
other.
much as I love
Father sent me into town
as
once a month.
much as I love to talk about this in my previous epic video, the ending of the series didn't cover everything. So I wasn't able to talk about everything I wanted
The West
to
of
say.
Town,
That's
yeah.
exactly
Oh,
what I
I
wanted
was
to do. I wanted to finally talk about
a girl beyond
the
me.
end of Evangelion. Why I also think it's a masterpiece. There is this idea
When I
that
was looking
Evangelion is an exception when it comes to mecha anime. That which is odd one out in a genre of anime that is all about giant robots fighting. But that is not exactly true. Just as it's not exactly true that science fiction is a medium that talks about non-existent
Father
worlds.
and I always chatted.
Stories exist in the first place
On that
because
particular
it has
day,
everything to do with us, with our history, with our
He said
future,
it's better for
but
a man
most
to
of
put his
all,
head on his
with
shoulders
who
than lose it over some
are. Star Trek correlates with time with the beginning of outer space. Star Wars, even though this work is space opera rather than science fiction, ignores a lot from our history to make the fantasy world more grounded in reality. And this is the same with mecha anime. Mobile Suit Gundam, created by Yoshi Tomino in 1979, was the first major series that brought to life this specific genre. Little did Tomino know how impactful and successful this series really ended up becoming, to the point where even life-size models were built, becoming one of the biggest franchises to ever exist. And while its success and growth was majorly due to the allure that people have of giant robots, the series was initially focused on the characters who control those giant robots. And what's fascinating is how truly dark and depressing this really was. It wasn't afraid to show the horrible events of war and how actions and decisions have
I ran to the castle
impact
like
on
I
everyone involved, more than likely correlating with the terrifying outcome that transpired in Japan during World War II. And then, in 1980, Tomino ended up creating the animated series Space Runaway, Neon, which many believe to be the main inspiration for Anno Neon Genesis. The animated series also had an encrypted ending, which 1 year later, Jesus came out. One that recapped the events of the TV
shortly after our marriage, before I even got a look at Talbot, the
President
castle was stormed and my husband was imprisoned.
More crude, it's brass, the way. It's not just a
My
big kind
husband,
of mold.
some quarrels with Sir Harold
Fancy mold,
Leonard Fowler,
you see.
who decided to resolve
It
it by
rushes on
force.
yourself.
He stormed the castle, burned down the village of Clarissa,
But I'm not homo, am I?
which was many of our
Let's see what
men,
happens when you
even the old chamberlain.
Just
He imprisoned my husband in the prison and put his own garrison there.
Three charts with that, however, is very interesting. Create three different conditions.
I was barely 18
charts
years
for
old, and
130 days.
all of a sudden, I was left alone with Sir
Jar,
Robert.
this jar was no extra egg.
We didn't know what to do.
For the last one of these
We went to Prague to appeal to the king
jar needs.
and sought help from Division's friends,
One about the second jar.
all to no avail.
I need forever this jar.
We tried for years, but it seemed I was destined to be left alone, and my husband to rot into jail in his own house.
And that is supposed
Years,
to
you
be
said.
7 years. That's how long it took before Harold was condemned as an enemy of the town. Even then, he refused to surrender the castle and release my husband. In the end, I raised the money to pay a ransom, and only then, in the grace of the Lord Jesus, did I finally lay eyes on my husband's once more.
It's called the Holy Sword.
Never. And after 7 years, my husband returned to me as his firm old man.
So there seems like a good, strong.
Certainly, he has many concerns. He had to move in Talbot. After he was released, the king appointed the infirmary in Prague Castle. It was very busy. He had no time for me to call. But at least we were in the city, and there was something going on. Now, we're here.
So young. You too. The best years are still ahead.
But what am I doing bothering you with this? You have troubles enough of your own. You go. Like you see. I enjoyed our little talk yesterday. Good night. Love you.
Remember when I told you about us happened? Yeah, it wasn't in this jar. Jar with water and light, however. The water did on that. I was a bit scared. I'm pretty sure I could still do this. But I did my shout out. I kept strong stuff. What do you think? How was the day? And that brings us to jar 3. This is the first jar that has two light at the same time. The clean ones and the white one. These may be the same species. What's that?
Wake up. Don't want to miss this today. What's up? Come to the battle.